episode of PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Valles. I'm your host. I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Optmyzr. So a few weeks ago, we did an episode with Google about value-based bidding. It is a new technique, a new strategy for getting more results in PPC marketing. And it's a technique that we've discussed kind of in the context of different things. We talk about e-commerce all the time, but this time we wanted to shift focus a little bit and talk more about B2B. A lot of advertisers out there, probably the majority of the world, is actually interested in getting leads because getting that sale is not an instantaneous thing. And it can actually take a really long time to get that sale. So when we talk about B2B PPC advertising, it comes with its whole set of challenges. And that's why we brought together two of the world's best experts on that topic, two great people who are going to have great tips and advice. So can't wait to hear what they say about doing better in B2B PPC. Welcome to another episode of PPC Town Hall. All right, and I'd like to bring in my guests right now. Say hello to Brandon and Andrea.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Andrea, nice to have you back on the show. So it's not your first time here, but you may be a different Andrea than the one we talked to last time, right? Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, well, I recently shifted roles and jobs. I am no longer with co-marketing, which is a place I deeply love, but now I am a director of client strategy at Tinuiti. So looking forward to new challenges and new ways to help B2B marketers out there.
Welcome to the show. Brandon, what about you?
Hey, thanks for having me. First time, been doing PPC for, 10, 15 years. I'm not going to put an exact date on it and age myself there, but most recently, director of paid media here at Power by Search. So for the last 5 years, really head down right into B2B SaaS specifically. So dividing and trying to conquer all the challenges of, platform updates and conversion bidding. Number one has actually been probably our biggest focus point. So excited to dig into some B2B PPC.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show as a first timer. Andrea's been to a number of SMXs. You blog a lot. You're quite influential. Brandon, have you spoken at conferences?
Some smaller conferences, not quite as big as SMX, unfortunately. I need to get a little bit more onto the content game, but you can some of my stuff periodically on our blog and then on LinkedIn right now.
Exactly. And I think it's awesome to have you here because we did see some of the stuff that you have done and it's really good. So I think you deserve a bigger platform. So, let's make this a stepping stone towards that. But really can't wait to hear what all of you have to say. But let's sort of start the conversation maybe from that angle that I was talking about before, which is we talk so much about e-commerce on PPC Town Hall and in different PPC techniques. But B2B, like where you don't get that sale like within minutes of the person landing on the page, comes with its own set of challenges, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about like B2B at a super high level, Brandon?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's pretty much the biggest challenge, with e-commerce and D2C, you can kind of see instant ROI numbers within the ad platforms, and it makes things a lot easier in terms of how you want to manage what campaigns are giving you ROI right away. And with B2B, obviously, sales cycles can vary so drastically from if it's product led, especially on the sales led side of things, which is, when you're looking at a demo, what happens beyond the conversion. So that's probably the biggest challenge when it comes to B2B. Fundamentally, the platforms stay the same, the campaign types, what makes a good ad versus a bad ad, things like that. But when it comes to conversions and tracking what actually drives value for your business, that's really where the biggest, challenge comes in. So setting up the right conversions based on sales cycle and knowing what to kind of train and create campaigns to optimize for it is generally the number one or most critical thing to do to have success in B2B PPC.
Okay, setting up conversions, right? Talk much more about that soon. Andrea, from your perspective, like what's the biggest, like you've been doing B2B for so long, like what's the passion there, right? Like what makes it so exciting for you and what's...
Well, you know what? Going back to what Brandon said is it takes so long. I have clients that their sales cycle spans to 2 years. And then the lead you get today, you don't know what's going to happen to it until 2 years into the future. I wish I could be a genie and, do some magic and tell you, yeah, every lead that's going to come in, it's going to be wonderful, right? So explaining that to a customer or a client can be very challenging. And everybody wants, what do you want when you ask a client, what is your goal? And the goal is always, I want demos. And I want them today. And I don't want white papers, and I don't want newsletter sign-ups, because I don't care. I only want business emails. Free email domains are forbidden because my sales team won't even look at them. So, right, it's a lot of education too throughout the process. One, and number two, understanding that there are different steps the user have to take in order to move through such a long journey. And really, I think in my own experience, what makes B2B advertising very successful is when you have a clear understanding of all those steps, what your sales team is doing with any lead that's coming in, and then how to track that across the funnel. So I know we're going to talk about all those things there, but I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Yeah, exactly. So much to talk about. But one thing that you brought up that I hadn't really thought about before was client expectations. So, I mean, you do have these clients that come in, and it is going to take 2 years, like you said, to get a conversion for them. Like, how do you set that expectation? How do you work with them for 2 years without them giving up? And like, what's the process there?
Well, when you get a new client, I don't know if Brandon will agree with this, but when I get a new client on my side, I tell them, look, there are things that are already happening that you are doing that we can leverage, and those will have a quicker impact. There's always the low-hanging fruit. But now there are things that we are going to be talking about: awareness, middle of the funnel, consideration, and those will take a while. Not everybody's going to be ready from the get-go. And I think when you onboard a client, even before you onboard them, you have to have a discussion with them about what their expectations are and make sure that they are aligned with what can happen. I am a big believer that agencies say yes a lot, and that we should say no more often and tell them the why, and create a realistic expectation what should happen. I don't know, Brandon, your thoughts on that?
I think you're reading my mind there. That's basically the exact same experience we've had on my side as well. So generally, it's just having that upfront conversation with that client. So, we get some accounts that come in that are in pretty good shape that just need some kind of retooling, refixing from a higher level strategy perspective. And then you get some that are, PPC didn't work for them, whether it's a specific channel or, they've tried Google Ads and hit a ceiling in terms of search volume, things like that. So it's really like setting those expectations with them in terms of what they can expect, and that it's going to be rocky, right? You're gonna get some increase in demos. They might not be the right fit to begin with, or they might be infrequent to begin with. And as you kind of train and get better with the system and your strategy gets better, you can start to get a little bit more predictable with it. And then I guess the second one is a key point that you kind of just addressed, is really what are the client's expectations from the program? And that's one thing that we try and do right up front is really get on the same page about expectations and how to phase those out. And then forecasting obviously can be a super helpful tool, but it really just depends on where you're at from a historical data perspective and what you can comfortably say in a forecast, right? But yeah, it's difficult to say or to not say yes in an agency role in terms of, hey, we can fix that. Yeah, we can get the results there. But getting in front of it and really having an honest conversation with the clients has been the kind of the most important part for us in managing expectations.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so then in terms of a client who comes in and says, listen, we've done PPC before and maybe it didn't work and they're frustrated, but luckily they've come to you to have that conversation. It's usually due to some challenges that they previously didn't address correctly, probably. Mm-hmm. And so one of the first challenges that I can think about is low lead volume, right? So, I mean, again, if we're thinking about e-commerce and selling potentially thousands of items in a day, and here we've got someone selling Caterpillar heavy-duty equipment, you're not going to sell 1,000 a day, right? So how do you deal with that low lead volume that you sometimes see in B2B?
Yeah, it's a good point there. I think, when we're looking at the low volume, it's really about especially like demo campaigns and like really like expensive, you're talking about really expensive products and things like that. They're going to have fewer conversions for, especially compared to e-commerce. For us, it's really about, what's the campaign objective? So not every first touch campaign is going to be focused on demo, right? Not everyone wants to buy your product or jump on a sales call right away as soon as this is the first time they've heard of your company, right? So it's about either looking at real-time conversions. So if it is those like resource downloads or webinar signups, different ways to generate leads and more demand for your product is kind of the best course of action. The second one is obviously setting up more micro conversions and looking at what are the events that lead up to an actual demo or a purchase that you want to focus on and start to train the platforms for as well.
Yeah, and I think most people listening know about micro conversions, but for those who don't, can you quickly like go over what those are?
Yeah, so micro conversions are the events that lead up to those bigger conversions. So in this example, I think demos are probably the most common case for B2B in this sense. So instead of just only focusing on optimizing for demos, you can optimize towards any lead capture, which is really what I was talking about in terms of resources or lead magnets, webinars, things like that, where you're exchanging just basic contact info. And then if you even have low volume there and it's not enough to train the system, you can even go to real micro conversions, which would be just events and page engagements, SMART goals for one example, but you track key events on your site that really show that there's more intent and engagement from a user or prospect before they're ready to take action.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, how do you go about defining what those micro conversions are? So you mentioned SMART goals, but is this a process? Andrea touched on this, but like, do you use analytics to sort of go through the pipeline and draw correlations, or does the client usually sort of know what these micro conversions are?
I'm laughing because the first thing I do with my account, so I have this whole list of things that you need to get done. But on week 1 of onboarding, one of the first things I looked at is currently what it's being tracked. Because I need to know, right? Before I spend a bunch of time setting things up, I need to know what are they currently tracking. Usually the answer is not everything. So I start with big form submissions.
But it's more than nothing, which is a good beginning, right? A lot of people don't.
Well, you know what? I've seen a lot, but usually the answer is they're not tracking everything they could. So I go from macro to micro. That's how I do it, because I want to make sure that at least the big guys, if I get a demo, if I get an event sign up, that it's in person, that it's with a time that tells you there's a high intent behind that. And then I go down, or I guess in this case, up the funnel, and then look at how much people are scrolling through my blog posts. Are they downloading white papers? Are they signing up to my newsletter? Are they clicking login at the top of the screen? Because I don't want to retarget those people unless I want to upsell them. So go from the very macro conversions, which is, okay, the really bottom of the funnel, and then I go up. And then I have fun. I'll tell you the truth. After I'm done with the funnel, I have fun. I start looking at things like, do I have a heat mapping tool to make sure which CTAs are clicking when they are coming from which source? I give a big, I think that there's this platform called Microsoft Clarity that people don't know about, or they have heard
Say the
about
name
it.
one more time. Microsoft what?
It's the mic. There you go. I'm teaching. We're recording this. I'm gonna put this into my personal LinkedIn. I taught Fred Valles a platform that he might not know. So Let me tell you about it. So Microsoft Clarity, it's Microsoft free heat mapping tool. You can connect it using Google Tag Manager, or you can install it on your HTML. And it does recordings, it does heat mappings, it shows you rage clicks, dead clicks. You can segment by UTMs. And one of the things that always bother me about heat mapping tools is you have to go in and say, I want to track this page. Clarity does it on all the pages on your site. You don't have to do it. It's just there. It's doing it for you, and you can just filter by traffic, location, device, and have fun with it. Highly recommend.
Microsoft Clarity, check it out.
There you
hey,
go.
thank you for teaching me. Like, I don't know everything. It's just I know more than the average person because I get to talk to smart people like you on and ask you the questions that I care about. But for everyone watching right now,
for a very long time, Fred.
Yeah. Hey, but for everyone watching, during the premiere, we're actually here to answer questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in on the chat on YouTube or on LinkedIn. We'll see them and we'll try to respond to it. All right, good. So yeah, that's tracking. I also kind of wanted to go into a little bit of a technology thing. So you mentioned Microsoft Clarity. the other thing when you're looking at people's behavior and scrolling and downloading certain white papers, do you have a favorite technology for tracking those behaviors? I mean, is that mostly GTM, and to what degree do you have to be good at GTM, Google Tag Manager, to be a good B2B marketer, or is that something you can outsource to someone else?
Yeah, I think it kind of gets into a bigger conversation too. More and more of the automation coming in, I think that really does make marketers, especially in the PPC space, have to become a little bit more technical or a little bit stronger in terms of actually like the copywriting side of things. So I do think Tag Manager, and especially with GA4 coming in, everything is event-based, everything is hit-based. So Tag Manager has been a focus, for our team and anyone that I speak to for a long time, because you don't need to work with a developer to get everything done. You can get them to kind of fact check you. So Tag Manager is super important because you can go in and add all of basically the default settings in listeners for clicks, for forms, for scroll depth. And just like you mentioned, we can add, clarity and heat mapping like Hotjar and all that fun stuff right through Tag Manager. So I would totally recommend if you're not using Tag Manager, go in and get the basics and set up the listeners, and they'll port those over into analytics, whether it's UA or GA4. And that gives you the full like behavior and hit report for all of the events that users are taking up until they take your actual conversion, like a demo. So you'll see, are they scrolling through pages? Are they going to your blog? Are they clicking on the pricing page before they go to book a demo? That's where you're going to learn and do your best learning. So Tag Manager is probably my favorite tool in that sense.
Adding to what Brandon just said, if you've never used Tag Manager, this is what I tell new employees. Meanwhile, you don't hit the blue button at the top that says publish. There's nothing you can break. Have fun with it. Test new things. See if they're working. Make sure that you are seeing yourself in real time in Google Analytics if you're trying to set up something there. But meanwhile, you don't hit the blue button that says publish. It's a free space for you to learn and test new things and make sure that you can track things. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Exactly, but be careful when you hit that blue button, because things can go wild. No, and it's also like, for us at Optmyzr, just like GDPR compliance and all the codes you have to set up to accept the cookies and do proper validation of all of that. GTM is a great tool to help with that. But so kind of the point is you can use GTM to fix your marketing. And if you break it, it's not just to the extent of, hey, we're no longer collecting data in analytics because we made a mistake, but there are some pretty big repercussions if you accidentally remove some GDPR compliance, for example. But yes, GTM is a great tool. Hey, let's shift topics here. So one of the reasons we want high conversion volume is usually because the more volume we have, the easier it is to do bidding. Nowadays, bidding is mostly automated. And I'm curious, both of you, what kind of bidding do you use before you have the lead volume, the conversion volume? And what do you like using for bidding after you get enough volume?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's starting to change a little bit. This is obviously a little bit of recency bias, but for our sake, everything that we start off with, especially with low conversion volume or new accounts, anything like that, we generally start with eCPCs to begin with because we have a higher level of control over those bids. Maybe that's just the inner control freak in me that wants to know exactly what we're bidding and have the ability to kind of increase bids on really high intent, keywords that have the purchase intent behind them. So I typically start with eCPCs, but one thing we have seen now, especially in B2B, if you're focusing on something that's like lower volume or it's a brand new start, we have started experimenting and seeing some better results actually with maximized clicks just to get the sample size higher and be able to get more data. It does scare me a little bit because there is no conversion focus on it. So I'm a little worried about what's happening with, a traffic, the traffic audience versus someone more likely to convert. But that's where we typically
what's the lead quality you're going to get from those clicks, right? Because I've always held the firm belief that clicks are cheap for a reason. It's because other people don't want to bid on them because they're not the best quality clicks. And that's often a disconnect too, right? So so many businesses are focused on just give me lots of leads for that budget that I gave to you. Mm-hmm. you really got to get them to care about, it's fine to pay 2 times as much for a lead if that lead is 4 times as likely to convert, right? That's ultimately what moves the business. So that's interesting. So you start with eCPC, nowadays more and more maximize clicks.
It's just been very recent that we saw a few campaigns with eCPCs that started to like stall out before they really got to the volume. So that's really more of recency bias. I would 100% recommend start with eCPCs, and then you can test from there where you need to go.
Hey, Brent, sorry, are you Canadian?
I am.
Okay, I just picked up on that. I love Canadians. I love hockey. I don't know hockey. Hey, Andrea, sorry, complete sidetrack. Andrea, what about you and bid management? I think you're also a fan of eCPC in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I start with enhanced CPC because I want to learn, and this is because I've been doing pay for a very long time. I want to learn if I can beat the algorithm because it makes me feel better. Lately, it doesn't happen that often as it used to happen before. But I start with enhanced CPC, leave it running for 2-3 weeks, and then start playing around. I use target impression share for Brandon. Or I use maximize conversion for branded campaigns because it's my traffic. Why wouldn't I want it? And it's also so cheap. Mm-hmm. And then for anything that it's non-branded, depending on where they are in the funnel, for demos, I actually like maximize conversions. For anything that it's white papers, middle of the funnel nurturing, I like maximize conversion better just because the volume is there. Even if I don't go for the clicks, I'm still going to get them. And a lot of people complain about, but maximize conversions can be so expensive if you don't put the handrails on it. And I'm like, who cares if a lead costs me $300? If I'm selling, like you said, the Caterpillar example, and it cost me, I have no idea how much that costs. I'm going to go with 50,000. So I'm fine paying that.
It's a good point with the maximized conversions, by the way. Like the CPCs you see can range so drastically, but it's one thing that, I'm always telling my team or our clients about is don't fixate on the CPCs as much as you used to, or the CPAs, because at the end of the day, the demo is worth more than, obviously within range. When you see a $90 CPC, that can throw things for a loop anyway.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, do you care about profit in your business? Oh, you do. Okay, so wait, why do you mind this as a high CPC if it actually gave you a profitable sale? Right, and it's that disconnect, right, that sometimes comes into play. Now, actually, in the comments, folks watching the video, why don't you put in what's the most expensive item you've ever tried to sell through B2B? So when it comes to those Caterpillars, Andrea's putting it at 50,000. I think that might be a little cheap.
I have no idea.
I know they come in various sizes, right? But yeah, I'm wondering, like, has anyone sold those big trucks that run in the mines in Chile? I think they're over $1 million a piece. So, but put in the comments what's the most expensive thing you've ever tried to sell in PPC. I'm curious. Hey, but Andrea, you also brought up the funnel, so let's go there for a bit, right? We've talked about that there's not many conversions, but then you were addressing, well, you have to think about people at different stages of the funnel. So how do you think about that?
Well, you know what? I think I'm lying. I have 3 favorite topics in my life. One of them is B2B, and the second one has to be funnels. Because when I started my career in paid search. I started in Google Ads, right? And then I was given the opportunity to Microsoft Ads, and then I jumped into paid social. And then I was like, cool, I have all these ad formats in my head. And then I was like, I don't think everything works for everything, right? You have different ad formats and different platforms, and you have to create buckets of people per platform, per ad format. So I have this massive tracker in my computer that I have updated with time because my opinion of them have changed with time. So yeah, not every single ad on Google Ad can lead to a demo. You have to be conscious of what people is doing on YouTube versus what they are doing when they see a shopping ad versus when they see a discovery ad, and what type of promotion or messaging do you want to give to that user. So I actually gave an SMX conference about the funnel, so I can talk about this for an hour. I'm gonna let Brandon add his thoughts, or Fred, whatever you want to add to that. But I do think that you need to have a very clear understanding of what users are doing when they see your ad, and depending the form of that ad can lead to a different outcome.
Okay. So yeah, let's hear from Brandon, and then we'll put in the notes how people can find your SMX session. I think you can still pay to get access to the recording. You speaking at any upcoming SMXs?
I'm doing SMX Advanced in June.
In just a few weeks, right? So in 2 or 3 weeks after you watch this, after we premiere this, I think you're going to be speaking at SMX Advanced. So catch Andrea's session. I'm doing a session on RSAs. So shameless plugs. Watch both of it. It's a good reason to pay for the ticket. Okay, Brandon, so what do you think about the funnels? You love funnels as much as Andrea?
I'm not sure if it's quite as much, but it's close. It's definitely close. And your point was dead on there. Really, it's just knowing what stage is your audience at, because there's a ton of different channels, whether you're using Google or paid social. And the common misconception there is, hey, this type of network doesn't work. Display network doesn't work for my business, or search didn't work for my business. And most often, it's just because it's the wrong stage of the funnel. So the way to think about it from our side of things with B2B is really, we look at cold traffic at the very top, right? So prospecting in general, someone who's never heard of your business before. The next layer is those who know what your business is. Those might be people who are, just website visitors. They've seen your content. They've seen maybe an ad or your organic posting. Then it's, the next stage is really, prospects that actually like your business. So they've probably, interacted with some content. They've gotten a free resource from you. Maybe they looked at a product overview video. They know what your business is, but they're not ready to take the next step. And the final one in that funnel is really, do they trust you? So have they really engaged with that content? Have they looked at the testimonials and case studies and success stories and things like that, meaning they're ready to take the next step and book a demo? So we really think about it as cold traffic, the warm traffic, meaning just website visitors, engaged users, and then finally like active MQLs and prospects that we want to take to, get them to raise their hand and book a demo in this case.
Right, and so I think a lot of the talk about the funnel here is up to the lead stage, with the lead being the desired outcome. But again, we want profits, right? We want sales, we want leads that convert. And you've already done some qualification here and expose them to content, so they are more likely to actually know what they're getting into here. But do you ever connect offline conversions to look at what happens after you've produced the lead and it's gone on to the sales teams and maybe it's become invisible to you?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in here. So in terms of that funnel strategy, that last stage is really active prospects. So we actually already know them. And in this case, so I usually do like a 3-prong remarketing strategy across each platform, because users interact with each platform different times a day. They're doing different things on there, different intent. So really the first one is more just like the website traffic, which again, might not come from third-party data or anything like that. Second one is really people who are actually engaging with, whether it's those are events on your site, meaning they're taking those micro conversions, they're opening up PDFs, and then we actually take MQL data, so any active leads and prospects, and we start to feed them into our remarketing campaigns. So if you've downloaded a white paper on our website, you're going to start to see all of our remarketing ads for more content. So we just serve more and more content. We try and be as helpful as possible with resources, blog articles, webinars, whatever it may be. And we basically just continue to give value as much as we can to that prospect until they've really started to signal that they're ready, in which case we start to serve them the demo or a trial ad in this case when they get to the bottom. So we do a lot of MQL and SQL piping that data and using, those targeting lists directly from the CRM into Google or any of the other platforms to start targeting them with that hand raiser ad, which is, hey, it looks like you're ready to book a demo because you're looking at a buyer guide or an industry report or something like that starts to showcase that there's buying signal there.
I would like to add to that too. I think a lot of people forget as well, once you get the lead in, that you have the email, that they are going to talk to sales. people forget that sales process takes a while. I personally like doing some campaigns after they talk to sales, depending on how that sales conversation went. They can easily mark them or add them to a specific list on their CRM. And then you can remarket to them based on that topic that they talked about, maybe a video, something very informational, but it's very clear that there's already a sales intent to it. And then make sure that you exclude that person from all your other marketing campaigns, because they are already cookie, they already talk to sales. Make sure that they are excluded for anything that it's prospecting and nurturing. This is not B2B, but I got my dog pet insurance, and they kept telling me via email and ads everywhere, sign up with us. What are you waiting for? And I'm like, I'm already a client. I already pay you for months. Can you please take me out of this list? So the same thing happens on B2B. People just forget. It's very important.
I think that's probably one of the key points there is, and it's the first thing actually we do when we audit any accounts is take a look at whether it's remarketing or prospecting campaigns and see what are the exclusions. And if you're not either doing the manual upload or pushing those directly from CRM systems to exclude your customers, or if it's sales accepted leads or opportunities for that matter from early stage campaigns, then that's the first thing we do, because you're likely paying for people who might already be your customer.
Fred, you're muted.
Everyone take a shot. Do it again. So I wanted to talk about audiences and targeting, right? So we haven't really touched on keywords yet. At some point, we talked about automated bidding, and both of you are now using them, whether it's maximize clicks or target impression share or some of those. How does that work together with keywords? Like, do you have a broad match keyword strategy, exact match, and how does that then end up combining with the audiences that we were just talking about?
Yes, I'm gonna say it depends on where they are in the funnel. Because for a demo, I want to be very specific. For example, I have a lot of clients in the cybersecurity space. And while their needs might be very similar, the solutions we give them are very different. So I want to be very specific when I'm doing demos with what I am actually telling them to sign up for. And then in the middle of the funnel, I'm using a lot of phrase match today. That's what I'm using.
You're saying when somebody's booking a demo, exact match keywords because you want to be very precise with what it is they look for?
Yes.
Okay.
I know it goes against what Google likes, but that's what I am doing.
Well, and that's okay. I think that's why we're here, right? Because, I mean, honestly, even the fact that you said, I can't remember if it was you or Brandon, but eCPC, like I think Google pretty much hates eCPC at this point. But if it works, right? Like that's why we're here to, there's the Google theory and there's what we actually see in practice. And if that works better, then let's keep doing that for a little while longer.
That's probably the most important part, really, is, we try and, play to Google, what Google wants us to do in that sense, but you really do have to test and learn and see if it's right for your account or the industry you're working in, like B2B, for example. Not everything is, super accurate from the platform recommendations in that case. I'm with you though, like the exact match keywords is definitely where we start. Typically, we'll do the same thing. We'll start with exact match. If you don't have enough volume there for your demo campaign specifically, then we'll entertain phrase match. And then when you're looking at more prospecting campaigns for resources and things like that, or you're just trying to expand, we'll use exact and phrase match. But our preference is usually to split them out into separate campaigns so we can help control the bidding strategy and the budget, I guess, for those campaigns, because phrase match is starting to snowball in terms of what it brings in and the volume. So it's a great tool for keyword mining, but separating them out is a big thing for us in terms of being able to control it.
So I'm hearing a big theme here, right? Which is multiple campaigns, multiple ad groups, different stages of the funnel are being targeted with different audiences, but then you have to put negatives to make sure it doesn't go to the wrong place. Like how do you manage? Yeah, it's fun, right? Hey, I cost $400 an hour. You want to pay me $400 an hour to put in negative keywords for you? I mean, there's got to be another way, right? Like, so what's your process look like? Are you using scripts, tools? And I know we got some Optmyzr users here on the panel, so that's not what I'm fishing for. But like, how do you keep things in check?
I can jump in then. So in terms of the keywords and making sure that they're, I guess, aligned with what we're looking for. So we have a standardized negative keyword list that we use, just very like cookie cutter-esque, that we'll start with to help minimize those. Generally speaking, in the pre-planning though, we will make negative keywords, especially like root keywords that we know are probably going to come up. Cybersecurity is an interesting one because there's a lot of acronyms that pull in a ton of irrelevant search terms. So we try and go through and figure out what are any possibilities that we can do to kind of remove those. But the short answer is, for net new campaigns, it's a lot of reviewing it, whether it's manual, whether it's scripting and pulling it into reports, or if you have other tools that you're using. So obviously we use Optmyzr as well. That really helps kind of expedite that process for us. So really, it's early on, it's a lot of like a couple times a week you're going through it, whether it's manually or using a script to make sure that you're sculpting the right traffic in before you spend too much money, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I think the best PPC managers are the ones that are on their accounts constantly. Yes, we trust automation, but it doesn't hurt to make sure what's working, what's not working. Just because an account was set up as it was for a year, it doesn't mean that you cannot refresh it based on what you are seeing today. I am not a fan of SCAGs for B2B, single keyword ad groups. So if you are doing those, I would most likely unify them as well. I know some people have a preference for creating campaigns based on match types. I am not a fan of those because I think at the end you are honestly just competing against yourself. So that should shrink a little bit how big your account actually is.
So for you, the different campaigns are based around what?
Based about where they are in the funnel, themes, and locations.
Okay.
Because I don't like to put my locations together.
And so do you have different messaging then for those locations?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I am a big fan of ad customizers in B2B. I think people don't really know about. If you have always been in B2B, you probably never heard of them. If you're in B2C, it's like you use them all the time.
Okay. Well, I know what they are. So you're not going to teach me, but teach everyone else.
So ad customizers are a really cool tool that Google has, where you can actually, based on where, for example, where people are in a certain location, you can provide them a different messaging or show them a different product and customize your ad based on it. It goes beyond the time, what is it called? Countdown.
Yeah.
It goes beyond that. You can actually do so much more depending on where they are in our audience, show a different message, and so on.
And it sounds so with the ad customizer, so there's the countdown, there's the automatic location insertion based on where the user is physically located. But it sounds like you're taking it one step further and using the business data to say, like, if they're in this location, then insert this piece of text.
Yeah. So for example, I used to have a client in managed IT services. And they had one thing that they were very proud of is that they had service representatives in every single state. So they would add a custom message to every single ad depending on where the user was searching for. So instead of having 50 campaigns from 50 different states, we had one, but the messaging was very personalized for each one of them.
Okay. All right. So shifting topics a little bit. No, actually, let's stay with the same. So one other problem that you often see in B2B is people looking for jobs, people who are not really B2B, but they're still using a keyword that could be either. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the biggest one is really the audiences going through and seeing what are the relevant audiences that you can use and add and exclude. So Like people who have visited your job page, for example, is one that we typically exclude. Jobs and any of those related keywords are actually in our standard negative keyword list as well that we apply to basically all of our accounts until we run a campaign for a client that's looking to get job applicants, and then we have to go exclude that from the list. But mainly it's the audience. I know you have there's life events and in certain targeting within Google you can use as well. We try and do that a little bit as like a secondary, but primary one is excluding people who've been to your careers page, and then making sure that jobs and application is generally added as an exclusion or a negative keyword across the account.
As well as the in-market audiences. I don't recommend negating them like negative 100, because I've seen some clients that they would or prospects that would actually go through your website, including your careers page, to learn about your culture as an organization. So I don't like excluding them to 100%, because then we have this secondary targeting or exclusions that Brandon mentioned. But something to also, let's decrease our bids just in case.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's talk about a new campaign type. So Performance Max has been a hot discussion topic lately. Is that something you've tried in B2B?
I tried them, got a lot of leads. They were very cheap, but none of them were qualifying. So that's where I was in that process. Only tested it with one client. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. But let's take those learnings and figure out what to do next.
Yeah, I think similar experience on my side. I've used it very infrequently. It kind of reminds me a little bit of smart display campaigns, for example, which we tested those, and great for getting a lot of conversions. But generally, like the lead quality, when we looked through the actual, this HubSpot list or CRM list, we found like prospects just weren't the right fit. So it doesn't give you the control you're looking for. Selfishly, I hear a lot of people talking about Performance Max, and I'm waiting to kind of hear what are the learnings coming from it so we can apply it. Generally, I love to jump right in and test and learn it myself, but I want to see someone else go through a couple of the hurdles and share some learnings before we jump back into it.
Okay. Well, we have a Performance Max episode as a previous PPC town hall. It was relatively e-commerce focused. So if anyone else is out there that's done PMax well for B2B, reach out. Maybe we'll have you on. So one of the things when you end up getting poor lead quality is just, if you're not teaching the machine what is the right lead quality, it can't really go and find you the thing that you want, right? And so by its nature, if you say, here's my budget, maximize my quote unquote conversions, if it believes that a lead is a conversion, any lead is a conversion, is just going to get you lots and lots of leads. And again, to my point, the cheapest leads are the worst leads, but you can also get the most of those for the budget. So presumably that might make you happy, but you're not, because that's not what you really want. So, but Google has come out with stuff like offline conversion import, offline conversion tracking, recently enhanced conversions for leads, which is a new way where you don't have to capture the gCLID and put it into your CRM system, but you can just use the email address of the person who filled out the form and track that all the way down the different stages within your CRM. Is that technology that you've used and seen any success with?
So, sorry, Andrea, go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually have seen what Google recommends on search, that you will see a lift of a 5% conversion rate. Enhanced conversions, it's fairly easy to set up, assuming Google can detect all your information and you don't have to go too manual with them. They do have this automatic setup that makes it fairly easy to do. Yeah, so far I like it. I'm just gonna go with that.
Yeah, and we've had some accounts where we've used the same. I'm actually testing it against the direct CRM integration to see what the numbers look like. So the actual raw lead number coming from HubSpot versus what does enhanced conversions for leads look like. So it's testing in parallel right now on an account, or we have 2 or 3 that are running it. The last I checked, it was about within that 5% variance. So I think they were right in that sense. Selfishly, especially in B2B, when you're using the CRM data, and that's really where all of our clients are pulling up their dashboards and their reports and seeing the value that's coming from PPC. we tend to lean to the actual direct integration route and piping that data back in. So enhanced conversions, we haven't seen a huge lift, but it will definitely impact and benefit you for some of those tools that don't directly integrate nicely, because it gives you a little bit easier way of connecting the dots from the real CRM data to the platform and giving them a better signal.
Yeah, and Brandon, that was one of the points you made early on, right? Is about our biggest challenge is reporting correct leads and conversions to Google. And so these are techniques that help you do it better. Now, obviously, you guys are doing the direct integration in many situations, which is fantastic. But anyone who's watching who doesn't have that capability, definitely check out the enhanced conversions. They're easier to set up than anything else. And there's also value rules, which is a less precise system, but it's super easy to set up. You can basically do things like say, listen, everything else being equal, if I get a lead from New York versus a lead from California, like I know I can look in my business data, or just my gut instinct is that a California lead turns into a better lifetime value customer. So all else being equal, I'd prefer the California lead. And so you just give the machine a slight directionality by valuing that California lead just a tiny bit higher. And now the machine knows to get you more of those and fewer of the New York ones. Yeah,
exactly. And we're doing that with, I guess, with life cycle stages. You could do the same thing with, if you're looking at a trial state, for example, and associating, even if it's average values or something that isn't piped in directly, you can associate a value with, a trial start versus a trial complete, or a resource download versus a demo. And how many it takes to get to a closed deal for you. So we typically enter in that information as well to kind of give Google another signal, whether it's coming directly from the platform or it is, kind of a bootleg kind of workaround solution for it. The idea is give the better data to the platform and it'll do more work for you.
Yeah, let's hear from Andrea in a second. But just to really be clear on that. So value rules works with locations, device types, or audiences. And I think what you're referring to is if you have these audiences already built out, then you can put those into the value rule system. So that's how people can act on that today. Andrea, you were going to offer something?
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the things I'm sad about enhanced conversions is that you have to set it up through Google Ads. I'm curious to hear what you guys are doing today, because I was a big fan of making my life easier and setting everything in Google Analytics, and importing my goals from Google Analytics to Google Ads. And with enhanced conversions, you can do that. So I feel like now I have to go back and do it all over again. So curious what you guys were doing before. Has this impacted you whatsoever?
It's a really good question. Analytics, I'm totally with you. Analytics was our preferred method. I think still is. Obviously, GA4 is kind of rocking everything on that side of things too. But that is our preferred method, obviously, to set everything up in analytics and then pass that through. So right now with like the enhanced conversions, we're actually testing them simultaneously with them as secondary objectives in Google Ads. So we're not double counting anything, but I'm actually just testing to see what does enhanced conversions look like compared to our normal process, which was importing from analytics specifically.
I don't know. I am just sad because then now if I want to use enhanced conversions, I have to do it on Google. And like you mentioned, well, Google Analytics 4, now we're setting everything up over there. So a lot of work, people, a lot of work.
Yeah, never a dull day in the Google world, right? You're always changing things. And speaking of change, very soon after this episode goes live, we will lose expanded text ads and we will only have responsive search ads. Now, both of you said that messaging the right thing based on the life cycle or the life stage you're in, the deal stage you're in, is so important. So with RSAs, just Google mixing everything together, like how do you do that?
I like pinning. I have this rule. Every single headline one will be something that will be very eye-catching. That's where I insert my ad customizers to bring people in. If I have any mention of the keyword that I'm bidding on in that ad group, that's where it goes in. Headline 2, if everybody knows my brand, it will be that or a CTA. And headline 3 has to be something that it's okay if it doesn't show up, because I know it doesn't always shows up. And the same thing applies with description 2. Description 2 will be something that if it doesn't show up in the ad, it's okay. The key messaging that I want to push forward, it's in. So that's how I am doing it. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, very, very similar in that sense. So with RSA specifically, like even testing, expanded text ad versus RSA, if you give Google the flexibility to rotate all of your headlines and all of your descriptions, it's going to serve that variation more frequently, right? So the way we're doing it right now, preparing for, the end of ETAs will be, we actually pin several options for each headline. I'm less finicky with the descriptions, but pinning several options for those headlines so we still maintain control. And then we actually do another variation, so a second variation of the RSA in the same ad group, which has the minimum pinned headlines. So like it'll be 1 if it's the solution or the keyword that we really want as H1. We'll actually pin that headline in there. So it's got the highest kind of resonance with the user search. And then we'll let Google rotate headline 3, for example, or because those are the value props that we want in H3. So we do one kind of restricted one that's a little bit closer to ETAs, and then we do one that gives Google a little bit more flexibility, but still holds the message we want. Because in B2B, I want the right person. I want the person who's going to buy, the Caterpillar machine itself, and not someone who's just looking at pictures of it. So that's the one trade-off, I guess, with B2B ads is the right clicks from the right people.
This is turning into a Caterpillar commercial. Hey, Caterpillar, if you want to send me one, let's do it around town. So, but wait, Brandon, if I'm hearing correctly, you generally have 2 RSAs per ad group.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Andrea, what about you?
I usually, if I have 1, that's it. I'll tell you the truth. One thing I noticed throughout all this time of testing between ETAs and RSAs, one thing I did notice is at the beginning when I let Google just take control, I was like, okay, here you have 10 headlines and here you have 3, 4 descriptions. I would get more leads in ETAs, and my lead quality for RSAs wasn't great. What I have found by combining the different headlines and pinning them into a structured manner is my RSAs are now outperforming my ETAs, which is exactly where I wanted to be at this point in the year. I do have team members that would do what Brandon said back in co-marketing, that they would add multiple to them to give them variation. But meanwhile, I don't know what the different combinations are going to be. I am not a big fan. So curious to hear, Brandon, what happens after your testing is done and which one does better. I do know that Google said that your ad strength will be penalized in some manner. Not penalized, but it's going to be lower. If you have fewer...
I hate ad strength. I absolutely hate it. I put up a video why you should not care about ad strength. It is not a living score. It is just based on what other people have done, has no bearing on what's actually going to work for you. So please, people, use it as a guideline. If you don't know what you're doing, look at it, because then you can learn from the millions who've gone before you. If you're watching this, you probably kind of know what you're doing. So just write the ad that makes sense. And if Google says it's going to be bad, ad strength has no impact on ad serving, by the way.
Not quality score.
Not quality score, right? So it does not matter. And as soon as your ad starts running, it starts getting history. The performance may be great. It's still going to be poor ad strength, right? So there's a huge disconnect.
Yeah, don't pay any attention to it, because I even tinkered with it. I know they give you the auto recommendations. If you take the recommended headline, your strength goes up more than if you just wrote out the exact same thing word for word. So
I didn't know that one.
Maybe it happened to me in a couple isolated incidents, but yeah, I don't look at the ad score whatsoever. The idea with the pinned and a few non-pinned is just to see, will it impact your impression share or your reach from it by giving Google more flexibility? And the short answer is they've kind of both served equally, because at the end of the day, I just want the right leads coming through. And it doesn't really matter to me what the click-through rate is or how often my ads are served, as long as I get the right leads coming through.
Yeah.
I am curious though, and Fred, this might be a question for you. Sorry that I cut you off, but do you think they will ever integrate ad strength to the quality score? Because it doesn't make sense to have 2, right? In my mind, it doesn't, because what's the I do have ad relevance as a metric in the platform.
Yeah, exactly, because quality score has the ad relevance component. So it'd be a little bit better if that was actually the thing that showed next to your RSA ad. It is majorly confusing right now. And I think they're changing some of the help materials to try to make it less confusing, because at one point they even said your ad strength is poor, limited eligibility. But that limited eligibility was confusing because it's not actually connected to the ad serving system. So they were just saying that you may have limited eligibility because your ad may suck. But maybe
I love that.
So it's like, but yeah, I think this is definitely going to evolve. I'm not sure which way they're going to take it. By the way, one thing that I found out, so A/B testing is very easy in ETAs, right? You know what's going to serve, so you just make a second ad that says something different. You can actually do proper A/B testing, and you can even test pinning versus not pinning without having to run 2 RSAs. A lot of people probably don't realize this, but ad variations will let you do this. And I made a video about it, so look for how to A/B test RSAs. You look at the Google interface, and I feel for them, right? I think it's a massive product, but to know how to test pinning versus not pinning, like you randomly have to end up there, but it is possible.
Yeah, it's a helpful tip. I found it was very cumbersome to get to find that and do it properly. So in some cases, we reverted just to like labeling pin versus non-pin, so we could see it actually across all client accounts. So that's the only reason I guess we did it the harder way.
Yeah. And I think ultimately you do have to test it for yourself, right? Because we have a study. Pinning is hugely detrimental to the general performance of the ads, mostly from an impressions perspective. Google doesn't like when you pin, so the impressions go way down. And even if your conversion rate is better, you may still have fewer incremental conversions. Assuming you were getting conversions at a price you were happy with, getting fewer is a bad thing. Right? But at the end of the day, you just got to test it for yourself. Well, we're coming close to the time we had allocated here, but any final thoughts on B2B, your favorite tip, something people got to watch out for? And also remind people how to get a hold of you, and if they liked what they saw, how do they get to work with you?
Yeah, I think my favorite tip in all of this is, the remarketing in the funnel aspect is really the most important for B2B. So making sure you're giving them the right offer. I wouldn't walk up to someone in the, on the sidewalk out front of my house and ask them to, to sign up for our services or anything like that if they don't know who I am. So I think asking for demos and that high intent offer when they already know who you are and they've already, digested some of your content and got to know you and like you as a company and a brand, you're going to have more success getting more demos by building that funnel. So just making sure you're not asking for something too abruptly or too soon is probably my number one kind of tip there from a B2B side of things.
Date first to get married later.
Exactly.
You don't have to get married these days, but date first.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say after that. Something I hear from people that are smaller B2B advertisers is that they want to do everything, right? They have a $5,000, a $10,000 budget a month. That's not a lot. As these keywords have become so expensive and competition is out there. So I always tell people, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do YouTube ads and display remarketing and RSAs and then search again and then exclusions. And if you have a very small budget, just focus on the places where you think you can be successful. Most of those cases is, do you actually have different pieces of content for every stage of the funnel? Do you have something that really talks about what you do and how you do it? That could be your top of the funnel piece of content. Do you have a guide or a white paper that talks about the challenges that industry, that person, that sector is facing? And then in that same piece of content, make sure that you exclude the people you don't want to, or it would not be a fit, and talk about it. And then make sure that you have a lower funnel conversion that can bring people in. It could be a free trial, downloadable piece of content with a demo, a contact us, whatever that might be. Because if you don't have that, at least those very free 3 stages, you can't really do anything else because you probably don't have the content to support those ad formats. Go small, it's okay.
A lot of work. So either do it yourself or hire great people like Brandon and Andrea. Remind people, Brandon, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me primarily on LinkedIn in terms of sharing content and reach out there. Separately, if you follow the Powered by Search blog, you'll find a lot of my stuff on B2B PPC there.
And on my case, I am more of a Twitter person. So my Twitter handle is @AndreaCruz92. Looking forward to seeing you there. And as we mentioned earlier, SMX Advanced this year is free. So looking forward to seeing you there as well.
Free?
It's free
What?
for everybody.
I'm finally getting paid the amount it's worth. No, it's actually very valuable. So yeah, no, that's amazing. If it's free, everybody should watch it.
100%.
Yep, it's free this year.
All right. Well, that's I can't follow up with anything better than that. So hey, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing all your insights on B2B marketing. Let's do another episode like this. We'll take a look at all the questions that came up and try to do another one. But if you like PPC Town Hall, please subscribe. We're trying to do about 2 of these a month. So subscribe to the channel. We're also doing other videos. Get a hold of Brandon and Andrea through the channels that they mentioned. Thanks so much for watching. See you for the next one.